want to share with you a little bit my belief that capital markets can actually help solve real problems. I'm sure that by now you have heard some history about the currency markets, the financial markets, equity markets, option markets, commodities markets. A couple of years ago or a decade ago, people didn't believe that you could solve environmental problems through a capital market. Yeah, now we trade SOX, we trade NOx, we trade carbon. There is a market being developed for the trading of water rights. And we believe that we can trade intellectual property. And I'm going to tell you why that is a problem, why that is a huge potential asset class. Think about this example. You've worked very hard, you got your degree, you got a job, you buy a piece of land, you get a title from the government that says exactly what the property is and that it's yours, okay? And you spend some more money, you build your house. One morning, you wake up, Anne is building a house on your property. How do you feel? Not good. And Anne says, you know what? You have that legal document. I don't care. Take me to court. You end up in court. You got to spend money to defend your legal right that somebody else is infringing upon. Let's turn it around. And you bought a piece of land. You built your home, you're living there. Wake up one morning, EO is on the door and says, you know what? I got a legal document. Yeah? And that land is mine. And guess what? You know that if you want to defend your right, it's going to cost you $200,000 plus 2 years of uncertainty. But EU is reasonable. He says, you know what? He knows that it's going to cost you $200,000. He says, pay me $100,000 now, and I'll walk away. Think this doesn't happen? Common practice in the intellectual property world, unfortunately. What is intellectual property? Loosely defined, it's creations of the mind. And it can be copyrights, patents, trademarks. We focus initially on patents. Patents are legal rights created and protected in Article 1 of our Constitution that gives every inventor an exclusive for up to 20 years to practice his or her invention without competition from others. This is to motivate and stimulate innovation. Companies use it to create monopolies for 20 years, and companies use it also to monetize. IP actually is an asset. It is an asset class, or it should be an asset class. And you can sell patents, and you can license patents, license it to other people. A very common example of a licensed IP is IBM software or Excel software. Every one of you, or your companies or universities, take a license on that software. And just to give you an example of these lawsuits, this is just out of the last couple of months. Xerox suing Google, Yahoo, Samsung suing Apple, Nokia sues HTC, the Supreme Court is involved, Marriott, Microsoft. This is actually a real good one. This is just the mobile phone business. Look who is suing whom, only over patents. Why is this? The main reason for this is that there's an enormous lack of information. Details, how patents apply to a particular technology, whether you're actually using it, and most importantly, typically if there is a license agreement, this is negotiated between individual parties. There's not a marketplace. So Anne would negotiate with EU. And if Anne wants to license something to many of you, it's all individual negotiations, and nobody in the room knows what the individual deals are. So there is no price transparency. I started the presentation with a slide that says markets provide efficiency and transparency. And I think that that can be applied to the IP world as well. So coming back to the real estate example, just imagine that there is no multiple listing service, yeah, and you have your property, all identical houses. One house is for sale for 100, the other one is for 200, and the other one for 300. You want to sell your house. What's your benchmark? Why are these prices in the same neighborhood that look exactly the same? Why are they priced differently? Why are there different terms? No transparency. In the real estate market, we have the listing service. In currency markets, you go to a trading screen, you know exactly what it's traded for. And the same terms apply to everyone. Yeah, if we want to buy euros, we know that all of us can buy it at the same rate at American Express or at the currency station. Not in IP. A very clear example is a recent case of Nortel. Nortel was a publicly listed company. I think a market cap at one point of $2 billion. It went bankrupt. The bankruptcy judge found out that Nortel had 17,000 patents. He said, wow, maybe there's some money to be made for the creditors of this firm. So he hired 5 independent valuation companies. They came back with an estimate of the value ranging from 250 million to 1.5 billion. They're all in the same marketplace, evaluating the same assets. Isn't that a big range? Okay. Google, who was very eager to acquire this for their own business, they wanted to have it to monopolize, went to the judge and said, hey, I'll buy it for 900 mil. Judge said, nah, hold on. Google, of course, wanted to make sure that they got it. They came back with 1.9 and some change, and then 2.6 and some change, ultimately with 3.14 billion and some change. By the way, do these two numbers mean anything to anyone?
Yeah, the 3.14, that's pi.
That is pi, absolutely. 3.14 is pi. These two numbers are mathematical constants. One is the Brun constant, and the other one is the Meisel-Mertens constant. But Google said, I don't know what it's worth, so let's pick a number. And they picked a number. They bid pi for 17,000 patents. Ultimately, the judge said, you know what, I'm putting it up for auction. It sold for $4.5 billion. And by the way, $1.5 billion more than the entire company had been sold for, all the other assets. So this shows exactly the problem that exists in the IP world. It is completely non-transparent. People have no clue how to value their IP. And it is very inefficient process currently to license this, to license IP. Why is it such a big issue? Look at these numbers. Yeah, $1 trillion is invested each year in the United States to create what is estimated to be $9.2 trillion worth of intellectual capital, IP value. Where does it sit? It sits on the balance sheet of companies. 80% of the market capitalization of the companies that constitute the S&P 500 links back to intangible assets. It's basically, you know, a remaining post. Everything else that we don't know what it's worth, we call it intangible, and we give it a number. Well, if you calculate, we go to the balance sheet of those 500 companies, you look at their market value, deduct all their hard and hard assets, you come to then you come to the conclusion that 81% then of that market cap all links back to intangibles. $9.2 trillion in intellectual capital in the United States alone. $500 billion in licensing revenue. Companies don't know how to make money on one of their most valuable assets. And I'm sure that you have learned in the last, in John's sessions about what the asset classes are. What are the most well-known asset classes? Anyone? Equities, real estate, fixed income, commodities, environmental products right now. We believe, as well as many other financial institutions, that IP will become the next asset class. So I was the other day with a very large company. I won't give the name. It starts with a D, ends with Upont. They have 15,000 patents. They use 32% of those patents to create monopolies in the industries that are strategic for them. Completely legal. All the other assets sit, literally rest on the shelf and are listed on the balance sheet. They monetize 5%. They are now under a mandate to increase that percentage from 5 to 25%. And they have no clue how to do it. And we believe that we have a solution for that. So we are looking at a marketplace that has tremendous potential, but that has a number of problems. There's a lack of information. There's a lack of information about the patents, the quality of the patents, how they apply. Second problem is that typically, as you saw, guessing the value of IP, you bid pi, right? Nobody has a clue how to properly determine IP value. There's a lack of standards, yeah? There is no standardization of contracts. In the energy markets, in the commodities markets, we now have standardized contracts. If you buy a futures contract for soybeans, you know exactly what you're going to get. You know the grade, you know the amount, you know the delivery point. Nothing like that with IP. The time and transaction costs are absolutely staggering. It on average takes 2 to 3 years to negotiate a licensing agreement, and typically $3 to $5 million in legal fees just to get somebody to take a license. So we believe that an IP exchange that follows really the underwriting model, so an IPO model for particular patents, we think that solves all these problems and ultimately can lead to transparency, price discovery, a level playing field, which is very important. It's one of my main objectives because in the real world, we saw these big lawsuits, but if you have a great invention and you go to Microsoft and you say, Microsoft, I got a patent, you got to take a license. Microsoft says, okay, I'm going to take your technology and sue me, and you don't have the money. That happens continuously. And so a level playing field will benefit the smaller inventors, the universities that have tremendous IP, smaller, medium-sized companies. Most importantly, in time, when you have a central marketplace with standardized processes, you're going to make the ability for smaller, medium-sized companies to get easy access to technologies, to continue to innovate, and thereby improve economic development. You're going to be able to accomplish that. So our model, basically what we do is as an exchange, we bring the transparency to the IP world by writing a detailed prospectus on each and every potential patent offering. So one of the first offerings that we brought to market was an offering on 600 patent assets from Philips, the Dutch electronics company, that relates to an OLED technology that is needed in display. This display screens on your cell phones, on your tablets. It is an extremely hot technology. Philips wants to put that in the hands of as many manufacturers as possible. And we're going to list it on the exchange. People can buy and sell it all at the same term. So nobody gets discriminated. Everyone pays the same price potentially. And on top of that, we are getting speculative companies in there. So there are actually a couple of Chicago companies that have committed to trade on our exchange. We have larger companies, investment banks that have started to look at our exchange. So while this all sounds extremely esoteric, please keep in mind that when Leo Melamed, which I believe you have listened to and who I used to work for a couple of decades ago, when he had the idea about currency futures, he was laughed. Yeah, well, you know how big that is right now. You know how big that market is right now. The same happened with the carbon markets. I believe Richard Sandor is going to talk about that. You know, that's now a tremendously big market, specifically in Europe. And our belief, and not only that of us, but some of our members include Ford Motor Company, Hewlett-Packard, JP Morgan, Sony, Panasonic. They all believe that this is going to be the next asset class. So what is IPXI going to do? We're going to be the world's first financial exchange for the trading of IP rights. That's all for now. If you got any questions, let us know. Thank you very much for your time.